Can a simple object like an orgonite actually eliminate e-smog and harmonize the energy field? Orgonites, what are they really, and do they have an effect? Hi, good to have you here. Welcome to the ultimate guide to orgonites and orgone research. In this video, you'll learn everything about the origins, effects, and composition of orgonites. I'll also tell you about how orgonites are created, what they can and cannot do, how people use orgonites, and their many case studies. We will look at scientific background, address the work of Wilhelm Reich and his discovery of orgone as life energy, and also examine the ideas of his critics. We then move on to the different types of orgonites, the product categories that exist today, and how to use them. This video has timeline markers for the different chapters if you'd like to jump around to the points that are relevant for you. Or you can just watch from beginning to end. Please leave a like and follow our channel if you want to know more about the fascinating world of orgonite and subtle energies. My name is Lindsay. I am the Prana drop and chakra stone creator in the workshop of the company Oz Orgonite. I've been working with orgonites for 7 years. With Oz Orgonite, we have already made over 40,000 customers happy and enriched their lives in various ways with some incredible orgonites. Constant customer feedback and the drive for improvement have led us to continually refine the art and science of creating orgonites. In this video, I will share with you all of my knowledge about orgone energy and orgonites, and also talk a bit about our extensive experience with customers, and how orgonites can make life better for all of us. But wait a minute, what is an orgonite anyway? Glad you asked, because that's exactly what I'm going to answer here in detail. The term orgonite goes back to the researcher Don Croft, who coined this term for his creation in the 90s. Orgonite is a continuation of Wilhelm Reich's ideas. During his discovery of orgone, which he recorded in his books Orgone 1 and Orgone 2, Reich came across certain peculiarities in orgone energy. He found that certain materials interact with orgone energy in different ways. Through experiments, he was able to determine that non-conductive organic compounds tend to attract orgone. Metals and other conductive compounds, on the other hand, have the property of emitting orgone. Reich took advantage of this fact when he invented orgone accumulators. By layering conductors and non-conductors, such as iron wool and hemp, he was able to determine the direction of flow for the orgone energy. The type of layer that is added last determines whether the energy will accumulate or scatter. In principle, the orgone accumulator is a box with an inner surface made of sheet metal that directs orgone from the outer layers into the box. Subjects who spent a long time inside the orgone accumulator reported feelings of euphoria and ecstasy. When this information later became public in the 1950s, there was a real scandal in the USA, and Reich was vilified as a weirdo with his ecstasy boxes. Reich later had other problems, especially with the CIA, who had noticed him. He was arrested and died in prison under unclear circumstances. However, there was a major problem with Wilhelm Reich's accumulators, which I'm certain Reich was aware of. Namely, that the accumulator not only attracts orgone, but also DOR. Now, DOR is short for deadly orgone radiation, which is the opposite of POR, positive orgone radiation. Reich originally developed the term orgone to describe the universal life energy that's present in everything. He later expanded his theory to include the idea of positive and negative orgone energy, that is, POR and DOR. Reich observed that in certain environments, particularly urban or industrial areas, there was a type of energy that he identified as harmful to life. This energy, which he called DOR, appeared to block or disrupt the natural flow of the orgone, resulting in various negative health and wellness effects. Reich discovered a high concentration of DOR, especially in humans, in urban areas. The problem was that the Orgone accumulators also supplied the subjects with every bit as much DOR as they did POR, and this issue would go unsolved by Reich for the rest of his life. And unfortunately, an overabundance of DOR energy can have a very negative impact on our health. But let's jump back 40 years and come back to Don Croft. Croft was particularly fascinated by Reich's idea that blocking or disrupting natural Orgone energy can lead to negative effects on health and wellness. Based on these findings, Croft researched and combined materials that he deemed suitable for converting negative Orgone energy into POR, that is, positive Orgone energy. He experimented with various materials such as resin, metals, and gemstones, shaping them into pyramids or other shapes. These items, which he referred to as Orgonites, were truly capable of transforming DOR into POR. This simple yet effective method of transforming energies just fascinates me. The invention of Orgonite solved a major problem that plagued Wilhelm Reich's devices. First, Orgonites are much easier to manufacture, transport, and use than a bulky and expensive Orgone accumulator. Orgonites are a product for everyone and can be used specifically where negative energies predominate in homes or workplaces. And second, more importantly, Orgonites no longer collect DOR like Reich's first inventions did. By adding healing stones, the incoming Orgone energy is brought into resonance with the natural frequencies of the gems. In this way, the incoming DOR can be revived and converted into useful POR energy. Don Croft was probably not aware of the significance of his invention. The simple construction and the availability of the materials quickly led to Orgonite becoming widely used in scientific circles. The rapidly growing internet at the time also helped to publicize his invention, and it was soon happily received by Orgone enthusiasts around the world. But how do Orgonites work, and how can they actually help us? The question arises as to how Orgonites really work and why they are so important, especially today. To answer this, we have to take another look at Wilhelm Reich and his findings from Orgone research. Wilhelm Reich is a controversial figure and is still not recognized in the world of science. Critics always mention the fact that we have no experiments according to strict scientific standards that can prove the existence of Orgone. According to today's scientific perspective, Reich's research is not recognized. Reich observed various physical and psychological effects in patients exposed to Orgone accumulators, which ranged from improved mood to physical healing. He conducted experiments in which he claimed to have found microscopic energy bubbles, which he called bions, in sterile preparations. He believed that these bions were evidence of Orgone energy. Although these experiments are subjective in nature and cannot be scientifically verified, it doesn't mean that the effects of Orgone are not real. But why is it so difficult to prove that Orgone exists? Well, there are 3 theories about this. First theory: the world of science is just not ready for a worldview that includes subtle energies. Today's science has come a long way, but scientists have adopted an ultra-materialistic attitude. We have banished the existence of a supernatural force from our thinking and concentrate only on matter. Just as Einstein tried to explain the relativity of space and time to the status quo and was received with skepticism, today it's difficult to change the current worldview and admit the existence of the supernatural or subtle energy forms. Second, imagine trying to prove to Pac-Man that there is a third dimension that Pac-Man is a part of, but cannot perceive or measure. Sounds pretty impossible, right? Well, it's similar when you try to research subtle energies. We cannot perceive them, we cannot measure them using our known technologies. We can only see what impact they have on us. Wilhelm Reich tried to prove the existence of something that cannot be explained in our terms. The attempt alone deserves recognition. And thirdly, a subjective effect is nonetheless an effect. And because of this, Orgone research deserves a second chance and a closer look from the scientific world. Today we have new and more precise measurement methods that could even show medical effects of Orgone on the body. Unfortunately, this topic is still very stigmatized, and no scientist worth his salt will dare to tackle this topic. especially not in public. In addition, a real witch hunt against Reich took place in the 1950s, and his equipment and research work were destroyed and even banned in the USA. However, the fact remains that Wilhelm Reich was able to help hundreds of people with his Orgone research and treated their ailments successfully. Alright, let's get back to the Orgonite. When Don Croft invented the Orgonite, he drew on experience with healing stones and other spiritual knowledge. Through subjective impressions and what he experienced with other people who had contact with Orgonites, he was able to deduce that Orgonites radiate positive energy. But there are also various experiments that can be used to demonstrate an indirect effect of Orgonite. For example, there is an experiment with Orgonite in frozen water. If you take a container of water and put an Orgonite inside it, and then freeze it in the freezer, you can see a strange structure in the water. You'll see that a vortex is created that starts from the Orgonite and reaches the surface of the water. Another thing to note is the fact that you can put Orgonite in the fridge next to fresh food, and it'll last longer. We at Oz Orgonite wanted to know for ourselves what effects Orgonites have on water, and so we commissioned a water crystal test according to Masaru Emoto from the Swiss Ernst Braun. The experiment consisted of a comparison test between a water sample that was bombarded with cell phone radiation and a sample that was also exposed to the radiation, but with one of our Orgonite Prana crystals next to it. It turned out that the sample which was exposed to the radiation without any protection created a deformed water crystallization. The sample beside the Orgonite, however, formed a stable, beautiful, hexagonal water crystal. In these tests, water was placed next to a cell phone and an Orgonite, and irradiated for 3 minutes. Normally, irradiated water cannot form the normal crystal structures, but the presence of the Orgonite caused a hexagonal crystal to form, suggesting a transformation of the DOR produced by the cell phone radiation. The excess of DOR in the world. Before we get to the individual examples and the products that exist in the world of Orgonites, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. Why do we even need Orgonite? What needs to be harmonized? Can't we just get by without it? The short answer is, we can get by without it. Living organisms have the ability to compensate for excess DOR radiation to some extent, but Orgonites can help us to increase our well-being. You could just as easily argue that you don't need catalytic converters or car exhausts, but they are extremely helpful in keeping the air clean and clearing a large part of pollutants and exhaust gases. A certain amount of DOR is always present in nature. DOR and POR are part of an energetic cycle on Earth, just as life and death are a part of a natural cycle. DOR has almost the same properties as Orgone, except that it can be harmful to organisms when present in excess. But, and here comes the big but, this energetic balance has been and is being disturbed by human hands. There are several factors that create this imbalance. On one hand, technological progress over the last 200 years can be attributed to the increased production of DOR. Reich found out the hard way in his Uranur experiment that radioactive radiation produces DOR, and nuclear power plants are veritable DOR factories, so to say. This is a danger of nuclear power plants that is often overlooked and many don't discuss. Radio radiation and Wi-Fi are also sources of DOR. The more the technosphere grows, the more DOR we will have in our environment. Why this is so is not yet clear. I suspect that the radiation from telecommunications creates aggressive waves that might just have a destructive effect on the Orgone energy. DOR in excess can create symptoms in the human organism. These symptoms may include headaches, exhaustion, tiredness, overstimulation, even things like burnout or insomnia. This radiation has even been known to cause cancer in severe cases. Many of these symptoms are so widespread in our society today that we have already accepted them as normal and blamed them on stress or overwork or something else. But who here is familiar with the feeling of exhaustion when you have to spend the whole day in a lifeless, large office overloaded with radiation and artificial light? This feeling of being drained after a long day of work can be attributed to being exposed to too much DOR. Our bodies, which are the result of millions and millions of years of adaptation to the natural environment, are simply not used to withstanding such high levels of DOR. DOR radiation poisoning of our environment is an invisible and unspoken tragedy of our modern times. I hope that we will come to live in a future where we will become aware of this danger and begin to develop technologies that are in harmony with nature and with our own being. One more aspect that I'd like to touch on briefly here is that we ourselves are orgone generators. And that means we can also produce DOR under unfavorable conditions. Reich discovered that orgone radiation is essential for organic processes and therefore called it life energy. We as living creatures are constantly surrounded and permeated by orgone. However, under certain conditions, we can become generators of DOR. This happens when we're highly attuned to negative emotions and thoughts, such as hate, fear, or anger. If such feelings take over in our lives, we create DOR by turning orgone around into its negative projection. This has to do with the destructive frequencies that we emit from our brain. The production of DOR is also the reason why there are cases of people dying of fear. The massive concentration of DOR allows the body to no longer perform its functions properly. If you look around at today's world with this knowledge, you quickly realize where most mental and physical illnesses come from. That's why Orgonite technology is so extremely important today. It will be groundbreaking for us if we use it responsibly. The world is sick and it wants to be healed. Orgonites are a path that can steer humanity and the world into a much more positive direction. Main products and their specific uses. Let's take a look at what types of orgonites are out there and how to use them. When you think of orgonite, the first image that comes to mind might just be a pyramid or a cone. This type of orgonite is intended as a small and handy room or space harmonizer. They mostly come in the shape of a pyramid, and for good reason. The pyramid shape helps to better structure the energies of the orgonite. Here at Oz Orgonite, we use the proportions of the pyramids of Giza when we build our Prana crystals. These pyramids are known for their sacred geometry, and it is even believed by some that the pyramids on the Giza Plateau were not burial sites, but power stations capable of generating electricity. Prana crystals come in different colors and gemstone combinations. Depending on the color and the composition of the stones, the Prana crystals evoke different character traits. For example, the Prana crystal Harmony, with the gemstone combination of peridot, malachite, and aventurine, stands for inner peace and serenity, as well as the certainty that everything has its proper place, the feeling that everything is as it should be. Prana crystal Matrix, on the other hand, with black tourmaline, hematite, onyx, and pyrite, stands for protection against negative thoughts and foreign energies that can often affect us in everyday life. This way, everyone can find a Prana crystal tailored to their needs. The Orgonite technology inside each Prana crystal allows for a pure energy flow for the healing stones, increasing the vibration and strengthening their effect. Prana crystals are ideally placed wherever we find increased sources of radiation. The Wi-Fi router in your apartment, on your desk in the office, or next to your bed are great examples of places for a Prana crystal. We've received thousands of reviews over the past few years from satisfied customers, confirming how the Prana crystals have changed their lives for the better. But more on that later. Next, there is the category of Orgonite pendants. That's what I create every day in the Oz workshop. Orgonite pendants are an extremely practical way to protect your aura from negative influences. Our Prana drops contain all 7 basic gemstones, including rose quartz, black tourmaline, hematite, amethyst, shungite, pyrite, and clear quartz. This ensures effective protection for your aura. Because Prana drops are small orgone power plants, they supply your aura with the energy it needs to be better armed against negative influences. As with our Prana crystals, the color and stone combination create different vibrations and energies. Prana drops can be worn throughout the day, although many people choose to take them off when going to bed. Next, we come to the Orgonite plates, or as we like to call them, Prana plates. Prana plates are usually used as coasters for drinks, but the larger ones can also be used for food. As you can probably guess, these plates are used to energize food and drink. Upon placing a Prana plate in the fridge, many people have reported that the food stays fresh much longer and even tastes better. This happens when the energetic field of the food becomes harmonized through the output of the Orgone energy. Orgonite pendants are especially recommended if you're planning a visit to the city or an urban area, as these places are often plagued by the stress of everyday life or by feelings of being uncomfortable in large crowds. Even if you often sit at the computer during work hours and a pyramid would be too large for your workspace, you can always try wearing a pendant. We particularly recommend it for people who are more sensitive with a deep feeling for external energies. In this way, you can take advantage of the positive properties of Prana drops. The last product category I'd like to discuss are the chembusters, in order to help the environment, but especially for nature and its inhabitants. The chembusters were developed several years ago. The cloud buster, also called the tower buster or the akasha pillar, developed by Wilhelm Reich, has become an environmental harmonizer that, with its wide-spanning reach, works directly with the atmosphere and harmonizes all kinds of unnatural weather phenomenon. Harmful effects of environmental pollution are also transformed, and this has many positive effects on people and nature. Further, the Akasha pillar is also able to activate the Akashic sphere and represents a direct bridge between heaven and earth. The chembuster, or the Akasha pillar, which is the variant that we've developed further, is preferably placed in the garden or backyard, where the harmonization effects can be observed in the sky. However, many of our customers have also placed the Akasha pillar inside their homes, such as in the living room. Here, the pillar has similar, very powerful effects indoors, and the roof over it won't diminish its transformative effect on the sky. So, don't be afraid to use one indoors as well. How do I care for my Orgonite? You might have some questions about cleaning, cleansing, or caring for your Orgonite pieces. Here, I'd like to discuss a little bit about that. The first thing I'll talk about is the energetic cleansing of the Orgonites. According to various sources, most Orgonites are best cleansed with cool running water. Other ways to cleanse may include a sun bath outdoors or discharging onto hematite stones. Now, let's move on to the external physical care of an Orgonite. Orgonites from Oz Orgonite do not need to be cleaned any more often than normal household items. Removing dust from their surfaces every now and then is completely sufficient. However, it should be noted that an Orgonite should not be subject to large temperature fluctuations, as this can lead to cracks in the surface. An Orgonite should, therefore, not be left outside over the winter unless it is expressly intended for outdoor use by the manufacturer. Personal experiences and case studies. Since the founding of Oz Orgonite, we've been able to speak to numerous customers, and we've received a lot of feedback about our Orgonites. For more than 12 years, we've been hearing stories and experiences related to Orgonites. The positive feedback also gives us more motivation and confirmation that what we do is a valuable contribution to society, and it helps many people in their lives. Just a few days ago, a customer called who is currently battling cancer. As you can imagine, cancer is also an enormous mental and emotional burden. She had ordered the Prana drop Raphael, which is our green pendant variant, having to do with the Archangel of Healing and Nature. She told me that she had not expected the Prana drop to have such a powerful effect, but when she put it on, she felt an incredibly strong energy that significantly increased her well-being. She was very, very grateful and shared this story with us. Some of the customer experiences surprise me because they often have unexpected twists and turns. For example, a customer told us about his argumentative and loud neighbors who almost drove him crazy with their constant quarreling. He bought a few Prana crystals from us and set them up around his home. After a few days, he reported that the mood in the house had changed. His neighbors were suddenly calmer and even nicer than before. They argued less, and life became more harmonious. As Oz Orgonite's Prana Drop creator, I hear reports like this again and again when customers call us and tell us how much, and often to their own surprise, Orgonite has changed their lives. I have hundreds more such stories that I could share with you, but I think we'd be here all day if I did that. But what I'm trying to say is Orgonite has been able to help many people. Orgonite spreads a positive, bright, and harmonious energy because it gives back to the environment what was taken from it: life energy. We live in an increasingly self-absorbed, mechanized, and isolated world. And at the end of the day, it's the weakest in society, the injured, those struck by fate, those that need help, that often do not get the help they need from their fellow human beings. Orgonite is a wonderful tool to make life a little more pleasant, a little more bright. Orgonite is far from being able to solve all of our problems, but like I said, it's a tool that's helped many to get back on their feet and will certainly help many more in the future. Some thoughts in summary. So, it was of great importance to me to make this video and bring the topic of Orgonite a little closer to you. I've been passionate about it for years, and I now believe in how important Orgonite is today and what potential it has to heal people, as well as our beautiful planet. Orgonite is a fascinating and versatile method of bringing positive energy into your life. By combining resin, metals, and gemstones, Orgonite can help transform harmful energies into positive ones and increase our well-being. Although the scientific community does not fully recognize Wilhelm Reich's research, there are numerous personal reports and case studies that demonstrate the positive effects of Orgonite. Whether it's in the form of pyramids, pendants, plates, or even a big chembuster, Orgonite offers a way to elevate the energy level in your environment and contribute to your well-being. Try it for yourself and experience the positive changes that Orgonite can bring into your life. For any further questions, or if you're interested in our beautiful Orgonites, please visit our website at oz-orgonite.de. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.